Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to section 8.7, Solving More Quadratic Equations, Part 1. First, let's compare a couple guys here. Let's compare this blue guy and this red guy. First with the blue guy. Do we know how to solve something like this? Well, we've been working on it for 2 days, so I hope we know how to solve it now. We start in back here, multiply, add up to the middle. So it multiplies to 4. Well, a 1 and a 4 does, and it adds up to 5, so it's perfect. So let's factor this. We have x plus 1, and then we have times x plus 4. Awesome, we know how to factor it, so we're good. Now let's take a peek at this red guy. Do we know how to factor this guy? Well, what multiplies the 4 and adds up to 29? I can't think of anything. Can you? Well, why can't we think of anything? Because we have this 7 in front of the x squared. Notice here where we do not have a number, here we do have a number. Here we don't have a number, here we do, here we don't, here we do. All right? This number is key because it changes a couple things for us. So let's try and factor this guy. The very first thing that I'm going to do is bring down my parentheses, and then I'm going to put this 7 inside along with an x, and a 7x inside. Now I'm going to take this 7, the number in front, times the 4, the number in back, to get 28. Now can I factor this positive 28 to give me factors that add up to 29? Well, we have 1 and 28 are factors of 28. 1 and 28 does add up to 29. Awesome. So now let's put these factors into my spots in my parentheses. So I go plus 1 and then I go plus 28. So we factored it for the most part. But now here's where the trick comes in. We have a 7x here and a 7x here. We do not want two of the same numbers right there, right? It might occur in the future, but right now we do not want this 7 here and a 7 here because we didn't split it up at all. So now we have to divide out a total of 7, right? We have one too many 7s. I want to divide out a total of 7. Can I divide out a 7 here? Well, I can divide out a 7 here, but out of 1, not equally, no. Well, here I can divide out a 7, and how about here? You bet. So I'm going to divide that 7 out of here and here, so I come up with now 7x divided by 7 is x, 28 divided by 7 is plus 4. What was my other factor? It was 7x, bring down the plus 1, and so now here are my two factors, 7x plus 1 times the quantity x plus 4. So our answers are going to look like this today. Now, these steps that we performed on 7x squared plus 29x plus 4 are going to stay the same for every guy that looks like this, for everything that looks like that. So let's see if we can figure out these steps. Well, what was my first step? I first brought the number down with the variable to both parentheses. Then I multiplied the first and the last numbers together. Then with that number that I had from multiplying the first and the last number, I'm going to find the factors of the number in step 2, that step I just performed, and then add them to find the middle term. Then I put the factors from step 3 in the parentheses, and then I have to divide out a total factor of the number and the variable that I put in step 1. So if these steps don't make sense, see if we can follow along with these steps for our next couple examples. So let's try number 1 here. What was my very first step? My very first step was bringing this 5 down in both sets of parentheses, and make sure that we're bringing half of the variable along. So we're bringing a 5x down in both sets of parentheses. Now, what was my next step? I had to multiply the first and the last numbers together to get 50. Now I want factors. Now I want to factor what I just multiplied. So I want to factor 50 to be 27. So let's try it. I want 1 and 50 to start off with. That adds up to 51, so that doesn't do us any good. Well, how about 2? 50 is even, so I know 2 goes into 50. 2 goes into 50 25 times. We add them up to get 27. Awesome. So we found the factors that worked. So I'm going to say it's plus 2 and plus 25. Next, I have to do my very last step. What did I bring down to both parentheses? I brought down a 5. So what do I have to divide out? I have to divide out a 5. Can I divide out a 5 here? No, I can't. But can I divide out a 5 here and there? Yes, I can. So I divide out that 5. So now I'm left with 5x divided by 5 is x. 25 divided by 5 is plus 5. And so I changed this guy, but I did not change that guy, so I'm still left with 5x plus 2. And so my answer for number 1 is that right there. This is your answer. This is what we have right now. 2 factors. Number 2, again, let's follow our steps. The very first thing we want to do is to bring the 24x down into each set of parentheses. Now, what's my next step? I want to multiply the first number times the last number if they're in order. So 24 times 3 is 72. So now let's start finding some factors of 72, but that add up to a negative, 22. So if they add up to a negative, but multiply to a positive, I know that both of my factors have to be negative. So 72 is even, so I'm going to start with negative 2. And negative 2 goes in there negative 36 times. And so now that equals, and I'm running out of room over here, but hopefully we see that equals negative 38. And so that obviously doesn't add up to negative 22. Well, let's just jump right to 4. How about negative 4? That goes in there negative 18 times. And then negative 4 plus negative 18, hey, looky here, is negative 22. Awesome. So now I'm going to put this negative 4 in that side and negative 18 there. You could have flip-flopped the 18 and the negative 4. Not that big a deal. Now what do we have to do? We have to divide out that first number that we put in. We have to divide out that 24. Well, can I divide out a total of 24 here? I don't think 24 goes into 4. And how about here? 24 goes in there, but not into 18. So what do I have to do? If you can't divide out a total of 24, can you take out pieces of 24? Yes, you can. I'm going to take out a 4 here because a 4 goes into 24, and that 4. So I'm going to take out a 4, and I get from this guy, I get 24 divided by 4 is 6x. Negative 4 divided by 4 is a negative 1. And now on here, what can I take out? Or what's the biggest number I can take out? I can take out a 6 here. So now I'm going to be left with 24 divided by 6 is 4x. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So I'm left with a negative 3. Now here's the cool part. What do 6 and 4 multiply to? They multiply to 24. So we took out a total of 24. That's where it, on that last step where it says divide out a total factor of the number you first put in, we divided out a total factor. We divided out that 24 that we put in right away. So now our answer would be 6x minus 1 times the quantity 4x minus 3. Let's try some more. Here with number 3, I'm going to take this 10 times 30. But what do you know about 10 and 30? They're both divisible by 10. Well, before we start factoring, let's see if the middle one is divisible by 10. No, it's not, but I know that 10, 35, and 30 are all divisible by 5. So I'm going to take out that 5 and set it in front of the parentheses. I'm going to factor out that 5. When I factor, I'm dividing it out of each number. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. And then I have a 2y squared that is attached to that. 35 divided by 5 is a negative 7y. And then 30 divided by 5 is a plus 6. And I close up the parentheses. Now we continue with what we did in 1 and 2. So I take this first number and I take it times this 6 to get a positive 12. Now this 12, you multiply up to 12 but add up to a negative 7. So since they multiply to a positive number, I know my factors either are both positive or both negative. But since it adds up to a negative, I know my factors are both negative. So let's try and find our factors. So 1 and 12 both multiply to be 12, but do they add up to be a 7? They both have to be negative. No, they do not add up to 7. How about my next factors? Let's try negative 2 and negative 6. They add up to be negative 8. No, that doesn't work. Let's try negative 3, negative 4. That adds up to be negative 7. So that works. Let's go ahead and use negative 3 and negative 4. So I'm going to bring this 5 down because I pulled it out already. So I'm going to put this 5 right in front. And then I'm going to go with this 2y here because I'm breaking it apart. And then 2y here. And now I'm putting a negative 3 and a negative 4 behind both of those two y's. And then finally, what do I have to do? I have a 2y here and I have a 2y here. Remember, that multiplies the 4y squared, so I can't have that happen. I need to take out that 2. Can't take out a 2 there, but I can take out a 2 there. So I rewrite this. Always bring that 5 down because that's the first thing you pulled out. 5. And then here I have a 2y minus 3. And then I divided this 2 here and here, so I have a y minus 2. And this is what we have for our factored answer. Let's go to number 4. 4, we take this 6 times 8 again, but wait, can we take something out immediately? I see that a 6, a 22, and an 8 are all divisible by 2, so I'm going to pull out that 2 and put it right in front. Now I'm going to divide everything by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3x squared. 22 divided by 2 is 11. Make sure you attach the variable. And then finally minus 4. Now we keep the same steps here. We don't care about this 2 when we're trying to factor what's in the parentheses. So we take 3 times negative 4 to get a negative 12 now. So now I have a negative number adding up to a positive number. So that means this negative means we have to have one negative and one positive. Since it adds up to a positive, we now know that the bigger number has to be positive. So let's start with 1 and 12. Since it adds up to be a positive number, we know that the 12 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative. Does it work? Yes, it does, because it gives us positive 11. So let's keep going with this. Bringing down the 2. And I'm going to break apart that first term. So it's going to be 3x and 3x. I'm going to put in my negative 1 and my plus 12. After that, our next step is taking out one of these 3's. I can't take a 3 out there because of this negative 1, but I can take a 3 out right there. So I'm going to take a 3 out there. Bring down your 2. And then we have this guy, which is 3x minus 1. And then we divide 3 there, and we divide 3 there. So we have x plus 4. And this is our factored answer. Now let's say if we didn't see that 2 right away, you could still factor this, but when we get to this step, we have to take out another number and put it in front. Now with number 5, very first thing we have to do, bring that 4x down into each set of parentheses. Now let's go ahead and take this 4 times a 5 to get a positive 20. Well, now can we find factors of 20 that add up to a negative 3? So both these numbers have to be negative. So let's go -1 and -20. Well, that adds up to a -21, so that doesn't work. How about a -2 and a -10? That adds up to -12. That doesn't work. How about -4 and -5? That adds up to a -9. So let down. Well, can we keep going? -6 doesn't go in, -8 doesn't. Oh, -10 does, but we already used it. We found out that it's -12. So none of our factors seem to work. So what would this be? This would be prime. And what kind of prime would it be? It would be a prime polynomial, which leads us into our vocab word. A prime polynomial is a polynomial that cannot be written as a product of two polynomials with integral coefficients. And integral just means they have to be whole numbers. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, any number that's not a decimal. But that does it for section 8.7, solving more quadratic equations, part 1. Good day.